People who are supporting Russia in the ongoing war with Ukraine. Why? Remember, by controversial blah. Go to our Ukraine-Russia report. There are a solid handful of Russian supporters who post regularly. They will answer plain as day. Gotta love all the answers from the people it was meant for. Russian here. Can answer you why people are doing this. 1. One relative is glued to a TV. So much that he doesn't eat, drinks coffee all day, and listening to propaganda all day long. 2. Second relative is afraid of NATO and behaves on this fear illogically. Like, we should defeat Ukraine. NATO will kill us all anyway. 3. Coworker is just stupid and IDK his reasoning. But ha ha ha. He's deeply scared of mobilization. I do not support Putler. But heck, people here make it really easy to think that all want us dead. Especially on world news. Edit. And I don't support the war, it's just my 2 cents. Edit 2. So many upvotes, wow. Thanks all. My Turkish barber was going off on one last time I got a haircut about how the US was the one stirring up trouble in Russia's neighborhood. People Reddit hates, identify yourselves so we can harass you. As far as India is at play, I can say that most Indians recognize that the Ukraine war is wrong but support Russia due to India's long-standing alliance with Russia and previously the USSR. You can argue whatever you want in regards with Russia, but Indians don't have the same historic opinions on Russia, particularly because Russia was not a major power in the colonial race. The fact that many Indian freedom fighters were educated in Soviet universities led to India naturally having a Soviet tilt from its inception. The USSR gave India a lot of industrial expertise during the 1950s-1960s. The USSR also helped India develop its resource extraction sectors in many states, especially Odisha. My dad worked at a steel mill in Odisha. He lived in an apartment complex named after a Russian industrial instructor. He remembers that many of his seniors could read Cyrillic but couldn't talk in Russian. Vast amounts of weapons India has are Russian origin. Losing your largest weapons supplier is not really good news. Russia having no historic baggage of bad blood with India like how it has with almost every nation in Europe. The 1971 Western action in the Bangladeshi Liberation War against India, who was supporting Bangladesh, shaped a generation of Indian strategic thinkers to think of the West as enemies. I am pretty active on RW subs. And while there is certainly a lot of propaganda in regards to Russia, nobody in these subs are denying that Ukraine is unjustified in what it is doing. Most of the issue they have is that the West and its interaction with Indian neutrality is hypocritical, as most arguments they use can easily be deflected back using examples from most major Western conflicts in the past 30 years. Not me, but a bunch of dudes I know support Russia because they perceive this as some kind of apocalyptic struggle between the forces of Western globalists and traditional conservative Russia, where man is a man, woman is a woman, etc. Also, almost anyone in Poland who supports Russia, it's like 3% of our population, but still, will certainly mention Volhynia massacre, which in fact was never acknowledged, let alone apologized for, by any Ukrainian government up to date. No idea, but a coworker told me Putin is trying to save the world from a secret world order. The cabal. The Queen's death also was part of this theory. Other members were Elon Musk, Obama and Bill Gates. He also had some wild theories on COVID relating to that. In more seriousness, my in-laws are Russians. Either they just watch the national channel so propaganda, And the typical "the West is responsible for all our problems" chant. Or they don't care about politics, and go on with their day cause it doesn't affect them. You can't answer that on Reddit lol. It seems like the comments that actually do support Russia just gets downvoted to hell, so we can't even read any proper answers here. Way to ruin the thread, guys. I wholeheartedly support Ukraine, but I'm from a country, Slovakia, where, according to polls, more than half of the population supports Russia. The reasons for this are complex, but I'll try to break down every one of them according to how they're tied together. 1. Russia supporters are mostly people who reminisce fondly of the past regime when Czechoslovakia was under Soviet administration, not a part of the Soviet Union per se, but under Soviet rule nevertheless. This regime was established after Russia forced itself onto our territory in 1968 by large-scale invasion, much like it did in Ukraine in 2014, and then last February, with the exception that the people did not dare to resist. The few who did were shot and killed, some by rifles, some by tanks. For reference, search Google Images, Czechoslovakia 1968.2. Those who have fond memories of the regime do so for two reasons. One smaller and one bigger. The smaller reason is that these elderly people used to be young and carefree back then. Many of them were led to idolize the regime and were thoroughly brainwashed by its propaganda since childhood. My own grandmother still fears for me every day because I live abroad. In the evil West, she cannot get it out of her system that there is war, famine, violence, disease, and disaster in Western Europe. Consciously she knows there's no such thing, but the brainwashing stuck with her. 3. The bigger reason is the societal structure and constellation brought about by Russia. Suddenly, everyone was equal. The uneducated, filthy, hopeless, alcoholic majority. Alcoholism was huge back then and still is today as a consequence. Was all of a sudden at the same spot on the social ladder as a surgeon, lawyer, or physicist. Before some of you think this was a good thing. No, it wasn't. Everyone was equally poor and miserable. Everyone except the select few in the ruling party, usually installed by Russia, much like what they planned to do in Caillou earlier this year, who piggybacked off everyone's work and lived like multimillionaires. Before that, we had capitalism and private businesses, and private property. This was all seized by the state. People's businesses got new management from the communist ruling party, who moved into their houses. The original owners ended up in prisons or forced labor camps. Suicide rates were through the roof. 4. But the majority rejoiced. Everyone they once envied, every successful person, every wealthy person, every intellectual, was now an enemy of the state. And rightfully so. How dare they live a good life when I'm miserable and poor? People stopped pursuing happiness and success. I'm miserable, so rather than being better, I want others around me to be more miserable. This became the new social mantra. 5. Now let's fast forward to present day. The people who once applauded show trials on the wealthy and thrived off of everyone's equal misery, they still live today. They have not improved. Slovakia is one of the countries with the lowest education levels in general population in Europe, and one of the worst education systems. Slovak students routinely score lowest on PISA tests and rank among the worst in academic assessments. According to recent results, about a third of 15-year-olds cannot read with comprehension. They can read, but they cannot understand what they read. 6. The population is becoming more and more divided between the absolutely lowest and the ones with growing success, which they accomplished after the downfall of the regime. And this is a breeding ground for envy. People are capable of the greatest atrocities when driven by envy. People will enjoy watching someone get tortured and murdered. If this person is a target of envy. 7. Slovakia has a largely populist and corrupt government, which harbors many descendants of the former communist leaders. This government picks up on the envy and anger that people feel. This government openly supports Russia and gives way to Russian propagandist outlets and narratives. 8. A part of this propaganda is a deep hatred and contempt towards everything from the West, including the European Union and NATO, both of which Slovakia is a part of. So among the open Russia supporters, there is a large group of those who hate the West more than anything else. So they will consider every enemy of the West a friend. This hatred is completely unfounded and irrational, given that Slovakia is one of the countries that profited most and contributed least when joining these global structures. The EU brought us jobs, a rise in the economy, transparency, international travel, development, education. The NATO offers valuable protection, without which Russian tanks would be in Bratislava today. The Kremlin wanted Slovakia once. They would still want it if they could have it. We used to be an effective slave colony and a statement of expansive power to them. 9. To wrap things up, the average Slovak Russia supporter wishes for Russia to take us back under their wing, in hopes of the re-establishment of the regime, in hopes of punishing the successful, in hopes of exiting global structures. Most of these people do not fully understand what they wished for. And then some do because they're perverted and twisted like that. Russia offers a strong social hierarchy based on race, religion, and sexual orientation, and this is ideal for people who have nothing more than what they have been born with. In any other system, they would have to deserve their place in society. Now they have white Christian straight privilege granted. So, I realize I made this very long, but you're asking a complex question that has no simple answers. I hope this helps. Slava Ukraini. I will tell you about my position as a resident of Donbass and how it was formed. If you are interested, listen and judge for yourself. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I have never been interested in politics. Even when the clash broke out, when the war started behind the house in 2014, I simply refused to get into all this, because I believed that the authorities always play their games and there are no right and wrong anywhere. From time to time I noticed dead people, destroyed houses, escapes to a bomb shelter, ordinary basements. But still I didn't get into politics and just cynically said that it's bad when such things become something familiar. In general, the conflict was in the background. I despised war and didn't like people who went to the front. Although my second cousin once said that, I have a wife and children were born, you only need to go to one place to feed them, and partly I can understand. I hated the constant curfew and the dirty places they threw you into if you didn't get home for a minute and a lot of other little things. But I just ignored everything. I hate the Ukrainian, Russian, Donbass authorities, they are all the same, for my taste. And I understand very well that wherever you are in these places, if you openly express your opinion, you will be taken away somewhere and you will disappear. I didn't have the courage or the stupidity to do so. And again, everything is the same everywhere. And then came February 24th. A little hype. Some videos with probable fakes about an open attack on the regions by Ukraine, and suddenly a mass evacuation followed by mass mobilization. For the first time, I began to observe the situation. Russia invades Ukraine. At first I thought this was it. There will be a quick and swift end to the war. I can return to the pre-war state. But no. Events just escalated. Crazy stress from the news. Worry about being sent to fight and kill for something I don't understand. I started to get interested in politics. I began to wonder why things happened the way they did. According to the conservatives I work with in Canada, it is either the US forced Russia to invade Ukraine or Ukraine is doing something really, really bad and Russia is going in to put a stop to it. They also tell me not to trust the stuff I see on the internet, but get their info from Facebook. A family member of mine supports Russia. We are both non-Russian living in Canada. I asked him why and he said he likes a strong leader and he doesn't like the West trying to push their LGBT agenda on the rest of the world. I didn't even try arguing with him, lol. Be a good person and don't downvote the people who are actually answering the question, don't have the same view as you. Was told by a family member Ukraine had it coming because they're the most corrupt country in the world. Russia is just trying to clean it up. Also, NATO is bad and forced them to act. They said all this in a sort of Tucker Carlson-esque way. Ask yourself this. This person is North American with no relation to either country. Not that I support Russia per se, but I don't trust anything the US media has to say. Therefore, I am highly suspicious of their version of events. The explanation I've heard is that Russia needs to establish territorial security. And since they have the longest land border on Earth with so many countries, their best bet is to have a solid buffer zone around their core territories to insulate them from outside threats. Historically, one of the most common invasion points into Russia is the Northern European plain, which Ukraine is a gateway to. Taking Ukraine on its own isn't enough. They needs to take it completely to plug the gaps in Romania and Poland and restore the Soviet borders. I don't care much about Russian territorial security and hope they lose the war. But I can at least see the realpolitik motivation they have for feeling the need to secure their borders. It's something the US has never really had to worry about since we just have two countries bordering us and vast oceans on either side. So the idea of needing to secure borders is less familiar to us. But the closest comparison we have is the concern over illegal immigrants coming in via the southern border. But even that is only like a few thousand per year max. I don't support the Russian government, but I feel for the citizens who didn't ask for this. Same with the Ukraine. I don't really trust what is being portrayed. But at the end of the day, I'm not claiming to be an expert.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.